What's up, guys? Last time we covered this problem called sort the columns of a CSV file, where we read in some data, flip it, sort it, flip it back, write it back, and defining each step took a minute, but we got them, and stacking all those functions up took a minute, but we got it. However, there's an issue, and this is an issue with many problems in many programming languages. It's really hard to read inside out. So to go from here, put it through this, put it through this, and to go from here, put it through this, put it through this, put it through this, it might be hard to find the center in the first place, let alone step outward through the layers instead of just reading normally left to right or top to bottom. So some programming languages have developed a way to write it left to right, top to bottom in a more natural fashion. Sometimes this is called chaining, sometimes it's called piping, where you take your data and put it through steps. So today I'm going to rewrite this in that fashion, which is not super easy in Python, but it's doable, and sometimes it's worth it. So what I want to do is to say this. I want to say we're going to return something. We got to create the right form for this object, and the way you do it is with dots. Just like when we have a string, sometimes we put it through a few steps. String, dot, strip, dot, upper, dot, split. We can take this, dot, whatever, dot, transpose, dot, something, something. Okay? So I'm going to go dot, and then right away I'm changing my mind about the decode and encode because it's easy to mix them up, right? Are we decoding first and then re-encoding, or are we encoding to our format and decoding out of our format? That's a little misleading. So I'm going to say from string, we're going to have a thing that creates our object from a string, and then at the end it's going to go to string. Which is impossible to mess up. You know that it's coming from and to, and you know what direction it's going. So the from is going to take this thing, and the to is not going to need anything because it's the same object. And so in between those we're going to go dot transpose, and in between those we're going to go dot sort. I think sort would be a good name for this thing, and then it's going to have a key, which is this guy. Okay. So what's our object going to be? We have to create one. We have to create a class, and it's just going to have this stuff again. It's just going to be the same functions as methods, but it's going to be, I think, worth it to set up this, to be able to say, hey, take a thing from string, switch it, sort it, switch it back. Beautiful. So what should we call this? Well, let's just call it CSV. You might not do that in a larger program because there might already be things called CSV, but for now, it's great. So just like most classes, it's going to have an init, and then we'll just call this stuff data because right here we don't even know what they are, right? Like the usernames and the numbers under them. I don't even know what those numbers are. It might be something about their stats in a game or their ID number. We really don't have the context. And then I'm going to make that from string method initially, which is I'm going to put static method because you do it before you have one of these, not after you've created the object, right? So it's going to be called from string, and then it's going to take, call it CSV because it's already called CSV in here, and I'm going to copy paste this. So we're going to return this guy, but in our type CSV with this stuff as the data. So this is like whenever you have a string and you go dot upper dot caseful dot replace and it's chaining those, the reason it's able to chain those is because they always return their self or a new version of themselves every time. So every one of our methods is going to end with return either self or a new version. I'm going to make a new version because I want to be clear about what's happening and not like, are we changing it or making a new one? I just want to make a new one every time. Forget about the old data. And then we're going to have one called transpose, which is going to do exactly this thing. Well, it's less typing to just do it. Something like that. And then we're going to have the sort with the key, right? And then we're going to return CSV of sorted self dot data key. Okay, this is going to look weird, but I'm going to say key equals key, because there's my key that I asked for in the method, and then there's the key that's built into the sorted function, and you have to give it by name. You have to say key equals. It's what we call keyword only. You can't just put it in the right spot. So is that right? Yeah, probably. Let's give it a shot. We're going to go CSV, and then you can't just stack up lines like this. You have to either put a slash to indicate that it's continuing, or put the whole thing in parentheses. I think that'll work. I should have tested the parts one at a time. Let's see what's going on. CSV has no attribute to string. Oh, I didn't do the last part. And that means I deleted the stuff that I needed. Okay. Def2 string this guy, right? And this is not wrapped up in a CSV like the previous couple, because this is getting out of that world. This is getting into a new thing. As it says in the title, it's giving it a string. For example, when we do that with strings, you might do upper, lower, case fold, replace, and those are all staying in the string world so they can keep the ball in the air and keep going. But if you say, for example, split, well, string.split gives you something else. It gives you a list. So we can't use string methods anymore. We're in list world. We could use a list method, right? But not a string method. So this is returning a different type, not like the other guys. How about now? Let's try it. Data is not defined. Okay, so when I put this, I needed to add the self dot. Do we need that anywhere else? Yeah, probably. No, I think it's okay. Hey, we got it. So that took a bit of setup, and these lines, you know, appear to be longer. They're really exactly the same as they were before. I just dragged them over. But this is great. I love this. I love to be able to say, do this, do this, do this, do this. In order, they're not squished into a line. You can nicely space them out. One, you know, maybe put this down here just to show that it's ending. I love this. It's called method chaining whenever you set it up in a class. And some languages do it all the time. Some allow you to do it even if they're not based on a class, like the language Rust. Rust will often have iterators going through a chain of things like, hey, do this, do this, do this. And they'll allow you to write it with the dot because it's so much prettier than writing a function inside another, which means you go backwards, inside another, which means you go backwards. And like I said, that might be okay for 2 or 3 functions, but for any more than that, it's a bit of a disaster. So I like this, and it shows that even if you solve a problem, you might go back and say, you know what, let's try a different way.